Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Market Check, brought to you by BB. There is no second best daily YouTube live stream to talk about markets, guys. Welcome. Happy first week of May officially. I know we had a few days of the show, last week rather, but we are officially into the month of May. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Welcome to another week of markets, though, guys. Bitcoin and really kind of equities getting these small gaps down. We'll discuss those things. You're seeing some strength in altcoins as well. An interesting dichotomy to start the week. But first, I'm Tommy. You guys also know me as Snorlax. I'm joined by Jackus, Prometheus, and of course, Big Louie, who is joining us on Monday. I can't really make the Tuesday jokes on Monday and Friday. They just don't hit the same. But happy to have you on as always, Louie. Yeah, guys, before we can get too deep into the markets, discuss kind of not just the slate that we have this week, because, I mean, look, we're getting a little bit of volatility at the weekly open. I think we have a pretty important FOMC this week as well. Some interesting movements in Forex. We're also going to be discussing, obviously longer term views, how we expect the month of May to go, et cetera, et cetera. But before we can do that, guys, I'm going to ask you, beg you. I mean, now you can physically see me begging you to hit the like button. So if you could do that, I would at least be very appreciative. And of course, you help us grow our channel as always. So let's get into it, right? While you guys are hitting the like button, because I'm going to assume that's what's going on in the background, we can discuss the pricing of some of our favorite assets. We've kind of gotten these, relatively small gaps down across the board on equities, on Bitcoin, basically about 0.5% to 1%. So nothing necessarily too major. I do think, though, that as we are now coming into levels of, some pretty decent supply, especially on equity markets, right? Because now we've effectively retraced the move in its entirety, right? That we saw, when the market was not prepared for tariffs. And then we had back-to-back 5 or 6% down days. We've now fully retraced that move. This is kind of like I kind of view this level as more or less the line in the sand. I know some people will view it higher up, and maybe it is. Maybe we deviate above it, I guess. This week is going to be very interesting to see kind of how we trade around these levels. I want to say that this is exactly how we opened last week as well, where we had a gap down on a Monday and then eventually retraced it. I guess we'll see. But I do think it's natural that we start to see a little bit of headwinds given the context of where we're trading, specifically in equities, right? I mean, crypto kind of front ran this squeeze higher that we're seeing from equity markets, but of course, it should probably that dynamic should probably remain the same in the sense that we have crypto leading the stock market. We'll see what we get later this week, right? I do want to highlight some interesting Forex movements at some point during this show. I'm sure a few of you are aware of what's happening with the Taiwanese dollar. We'll definitely talk about that because that's a pretty extreme move for an FX pair. I guess it's a big week, right? Gold up 2%. It probably makes sense we're seeing that as well in confluence with this supply level. Will we bust through, or will we continue to kind of do this this upward chop and grind that we've kind of I would say has kind of been more accustomed than what we've seen probably since like late 2023, early 2024. But that's enough yap for me, guys. I'm going to open the floor. I'd love to know y'all's thoughts. I think we have quite a bit to talk about. And even through that intro, I barely even mentioned the fact that we have a pretty important FOMC meeting this week. Will we get a surprise interest rate cut? I think the market's pricing it at like 1 or 2%. So probably not. But yeah, how are we doing, guys? What are we seeing in the markets? What jumps off the page, as we open the week?
Yeah, Mondays are always great to get into. I mean, we've had the 3-day kind of, quiet period, and now we have a whole week of fresh topics and narratives to discuss. So glad to be here with you guys at the beginning of the week. But yeah, I mean, we have obviously the significance of the FOMC, and something that I've really kind of been paying attention to is the gold oil pair. And I talked about it in the morning Discord call. And I kind of brought it up to the members, and I said, once you see a real blow off in that pair, I think that you can, be pretty certain with a high degree of confidence that the low is probably in. But we aren't really seeing the blow off yet, right? Gold is usually a risk off asset, and we're still seeing it, grind higher, whereas oil is more, inflationary. Usually, when it's appreciating in price, that's in store with, good economic conditions, and we're not really seeing that right now. So I think that we could backfill some of the liquidity that we left down at 84, 88K, still very much in that camp. But a big week, big week, right? And it's going to be interesting too to see kind of how Fed comes out and whether or not he's dovish at the FOMC meeting, and whether or not the pressure is getting to him. Because that's been something that a lot of people have been talking about, right? There's a lot of pressures, whether that is market related, politically related, or maybe from his wife. Who knows? But But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what Fed does, what the Fed does at the meeting. So it's kind of what I'm seeing. Louis, what are you seeing?
Just seeing some pullback, man. I mean, we've had a great couple weeks, but 2 back-to-back weeks, crypto equities across the board. I think equities, or the S&P specifically, was up like 9 straight days in a row, like not really, it was probably one of the few times we've seen that. So, pullbacks make sense, right? And that's something I've been trying to prepare the Discord for. It's just like, we've been seeing good price action across the board, but we always got to be prepared for that pullback. We've seen crypto pull back a little bit over the weekend, like Tommy said, probably front running this equity drop we're seeing this morning. And then let's see, right? Pullbacks are part of the game, right? Markets don't go up in a straight line. They don't go down in a straight line. So let's see where this pullback takes us, and let's see where we end the week. But all in all, normal price action, right? You had Bitcoin, big move off the lows, trade coming into a nice new big range here up in this area. We tried to push higher into the range on Friday. And now we're starting to pull back. So, we have our levels for Bitcoin. This is a big level I'm watching for Bitcoin if we do see a deeper pullback. And now it would just make a lot of sense, right? Flipping this new range into support. And then we want to see Bitcoin hold this level. So just seeing some, well-anticipated pullbacks. And what's more important than the big moves off the lows we've seen in Bitcoin and altcoins is, can we hold on to those gains? Can we make higher lows? And can we continue higher? That's really what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, I think the market is now waiting for FOMC as typical, during FOMC weeks, not expecting much volatility until then, and then release some hedges maybe. I think the market is going to move where it wants to regardless. I was also making a tweet earlier today when it comes to ETH price action. And if you think about it, we've been down only for the past 4 months. In my opinion, it makes very little reason to be bearish down here. Even, and I'm not in that camp, but even if, everything was supposed to go to hell, I think we should get some meaningful bounce on it. So, probably above like 2.5K at minimum. And if you think about it even more, then if you're gonna erase November 2024 from ETH has been going down for more than a year. That's longer than the bear market of 2022. Just to make a comparison. So ETH, again, since March 2024 except November 2024, has basically been going down only. This whole time, it made, and rightfully so, everyone absolutely angry and, bearish on it. down here. But I think it makes no sense unless, again, under the circumstance it's entirely over. I do not think it makes sense to be bearish down here. Not on ETH. And listen, if ETH is going to go up, likely everything else is going as well. So again, I do not think it. Again, you do not have to be like buying ETH. You can be bullish on it. That doesn't mean you have to be buying it. Two separate things. But just being bullish on it means being bullish on the rest of the market. Again, it's more like, does it make sense to remain bearish on ETH? No. So that likely means we are going to be bullish. Now, do I have to buy ETH? No. But it likely means it's bullish for, the rest of the market.
I tend to think whenever ETH does spring back, it's going to be pretty quick. Being that I'm not necessarily in the extended recession camp, I don't think you can rule that scenario out, depending on kind of how the high time frame structure ends up shaping out this year. But I lean more that if there is going to be more downside from ETH, it's likely to happen in the short term. And if it does happen, I mean, you're probably bouncing back very, very quickly. And I actually, Zoran Cole, I saw him posting a bullish chart for ETH Bitcoin back into 0.03 here over the summer. I think that's pretty feasible. I tend to think it happens after probably another lower low on ETH BTC, but I am not at all opposed to that idea. Now, I'm not going to call for higher price targets on ETH BTC than that, but I do think probably a bounce into that level makes sense ultimately before Bitcoin and Bitcoin dominance ends up taking the reins back. But I mean, that's kind of how I'm viewing the order of operations in my head at the moment.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm not bullish here on ETH BTC just yet. As I said previously, I think Bitcoin will lead Ether USD to the upside, and ETH outperformance only, in my opinion, comes whenever ETH breaks 4K.
I agree. Clearly, that's a pretty thick supply for ETH. I am curious, how we're going to trade when we get back up there, because I do think, I don't think that ETH is going to zero as much as I love to joke about it. I don't think it's a good thing if ETH were to go to zero. But I do know that 4K supply region is thick, so we could be trading around it for. I don't know if I think we're just going to knife through it is probably what I'm saying, but I could be wrong. Obviously, maybe the people want to bid ETH at that point, and maybe 3 or 4K ETH is much more attractive the fourth time around. I'm a big proponent of fourth taps, especially on a higher time frame. So it'd kind of be like a double whammy 4 tap almost, or like a 6 tap almost for that 4K spot. But yeah, no, I agree with you, Jackus. I think when that level gives, that will be when we see the ETH outperformance resume. I just wonder, could we get a world where Bitcoin is trading, even significantly higher than current prices, where ETH is still just kind of waffling around 3 or 4K?
I'm not sure if you saw my fractal over the weekend regarding ETH and COVID, but I think it could play out similarly. And I think we were discussing this one actually, I think it might be you, Tommy, who brought it up at first, many months ago, probably in December or January, not sure. But I think, psychologically wise, it just makes so much sense for ETH to repeat the same type of play. So if that were to go the same, and I've been live through COVID Bitcoin price action, basically everyone turned absolutely bearish on Bitcoin after COVID and remained COVID. And the argument was always this, hey, it's a pandemic out there, people are not in their jobs. And it made, logical, fundamental sense. It was always the same. Look at it around yourselves, everyone's locked in their homes. How do you think the stock market is going to go up? And so everyone was bearish after COVID all the way up, and Bitcoin dropped down to 3.5 4K, 3.5K, depending, how deep the wick was on each exchange. And that then crawled back up to 10K. That's the same type of magnitude of a move that ETH has up to 4K right now. It was also pretty unimaginable back then. And I feel nowadays people have similar, reasonings not to be long. They are like, hey, look around yourselves. It's tariffs, it's US versus China. How can you be bullish? To me, it rings the same tone. I think the price will crawl back to 4K, might stop there, just like BTC has at 10K. Lots of people back then still bearish retest, still just bear market rally until then. Then Bitcoin breaks 10K up to 12. Suddenly, everyone who was bearish the entire way turns bullish. That equivalent would probably be ETH breaking that 4K up to like 5, 6K. Somehow that bullish retest from 12K to 10K in, I think it was August till October 2020, somehow everyone was bearish that retest, totally bearish. Market, and that's, I think, when a sailor comes in and announces that he's starting to buy BTC, interestingly, and then we know what followed. I think we could see a similar type of outcome for ETH where it breaks to 6. And again, people will be like, are you crazy? That's never happening. Exactly the same arguments. And I think it just makes the most sense.
Yeah, I remember back in, it was probably like last summer, actually, that it was kind of the first time I was talking about, sorry, I'm just plugging my computer in, kind of the first time I started finding the comparisons between ETH, the current bear market cycle or echo bubble cycle, whatever you want to call it, for ETH, and kind of the similarities that it shared with Bitcoin in 2019 and 2020. I will say now that we've kind of, I wouldn't say that we've seen it play out necessarily. We kind of have. I was kind of looking for a more violent move down than the one that we got. I get the justification that maybe we just saw a more controlled version of the COVID decline, because let's be honest, it's probably a good thing that we did not see a sell-off with the verticality that COVID had. I don't know if I view them as similar as I did, and not to say that it won't play out, but I kind of think that it will play out, but on a longer time horizon than I probably expected, right? So I was probably looking for an ETH breakout maybe at the end of this year, 2026. I think it might end up taking a little bit longer than that, truthfully. But I don't think that ETH's going to zero. I could still see ETH USD make a lower low. I don't think that you should just aggressively go shorting the whole. That's just kind of like a gut feeling of mine based on my read on equity markets. But ultimately, I don't think ETH's going to zero. I do think eventually we'll break above that 4K level. It's probably the timeline, I guess, is probably up for debate. And it is going to be one of those examples of like, okay, well, market will test your patience probably longer than you can stay solvent.
Yeah. I think it played out to the magnitude, Tommy. It just hasn't been in such a quick fashion, because the market was kind of front running that, right? So the downside basically was happening from December, January till April on ETH, but it played out like the same type of COVID move played out, just a bit more gradually. But you still had that final capitulation down, sub 1500 that happened at the later stage. And if you remember, I was discussing this in February. Lots of people were still bullish back then, saying that we had the capitulation. I was saying, no, the capitulation happens mentally and it needs to happen sub 2K. Now we've broken sub 2K, and suddenly everyone has capitulated and is insanely bearish on any bullish upside on ETH, to me. And I do think the way that, we are spending basically 2 months now sub below 2K, that's the mental capitulation. And that's exactly what I think is going to prop up higher.
I do think it's coming. I mean, ETH is kind of a beach ball underwater. I just wonder if that beach ball gets pushed a little bit deeper before the spring, because I do think, like, as I said at the start of the show, I think the eventual spring out is going to be a quick one. I kind of think it's going to be one of those things where, like, you hit a high time frame demand level, and then within like a week or 2 weeks later, you've completely engulfed whatever downside move that you've had. So, I mean, maybe we get that, maybe we don't. Like I said, don't go positioning your net worth short ETH, because I do think we're at the point now where even if you're looking for downside, the upside swing is going to probably be significantly more aggressive and probably a lot faster than most people expect. I'm, beyond all-time high, beyond like 3 or 4K. I think it's anybody's guess when that breakout comes, but like the spring back to those levels, I don't think is as far away as as it feels. Probably for something like ETH, which is sentimentally down horrendously, like you were saying, Jackus.
Yeah, sentiment is in the gutters and will stay there. I legit think it will stay there until like 6K, 6K. I do not think even even if ETH traded to 4K now, again, if it traded there alone, which we know it will not, then yes, things would change. But the thing is it will trade up with Bitcoin up to 4K, and so nobody will care. And then ETH will probably break that 4K at some point. Might not be on the first go, but at some point. You are trading at 5K, suddenly you will have the first people getting bullish on it, in my opinion. But until then, no. And I do think on the retest that will come at some point. Maybe not, maybe it's like, you spend time sub 4K and then you just break out, you never retest, and it's a maximum cope. Can happen too. We'll have to see how we get there. But one thing I'm sure is that most will cope. It will be hated rarely.
Probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the sentiment on ETH cannot. It's really hard to get more bearish on ETH from a sentiment perspective than where we're currently at. And I mean, from a market positioning perspective, if we do see, really strong catalysts coming to the market, you start to see Ethereum Foundation or just people incentivized to go to ETH on chain or just ETH in general, you're gonna get shorts get wrecked really quickly, and it's really like just a tinderbox that's getting ready to be lit. It could take a lot longer than some people may think and believe and want, but from a sentiment perspective, absolutely bottomed. Absolutely bottomed.
Yeah. I still think that the fundamental case for ETH is benefiting from all of its L2s. Somehow, you somehow want, and I heard there are changes coming to the protocol too. But you want ETH benefiting from the growth of its L2s, but I feel right now it's not.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that, Jack. It's like it's like a company providing a service and being like, and incurring all the overhead costs and being like, no, it's okay, you can just use it for free. Like, no, that's not sustainable for any business, Like, oh, it's okay, come in, eat all of our food, you don't have to pay us. Like,
exactly. Like it's generous, but you're gonna go broke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think for me, it's less about the L2s, more about like the DeFi reset that I've been asking for so long, man. And I think like the best chart that's kind of highlighted the resilience of that sector is one that we've talked about before. It's Pendle. I really would just want to see these yield Ponzi's, basically complete their cycles. So that ETH can then begin again without that baggage. But maybe we don't get it. Maybe Pendle just ends up forming the ugliest reaccumulation range we've ever seen. But that's kind of always been like my signal that I've been looking for. I don't know. We've talked about this before, so I won't harp on it too much. But
well, I mean, what's tricky too is like Aave literally just today, Aave and Pendle just announced a partnership. And
My Macs
so,
like it.
yes, the Ponzi, but what's interesting is from kind of like the whole scummy DeFi perspective is how, the fingers are everywhere now. And it's so intertwined with so many different aspects of the market that, it's like Tether. Like Tether strategically positioned themselves to, you know, buy up all these US treasuries to the point to where they can't get prosecuted by the United States government, because if they do, they're just gonna be like, all right, we'll just dump all of our, dump all the debt on the market and then have fun dealing with that. Um, so it's kind of like, I think Pendle is maybe in a similar situation at this point where they're so intertwined with the market that there's a lot of other names that will help to prop up these DeFi Ponzi's in the event that anything catastrophic may ever happen.
I'm intrigued to see if we get a little bit of a bounce here to open the week. I am kind of expecting probably another high on equities here, locally speaking, before we start to sell off again. I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's going to be a lower high or rather a higher low, or if it's going to be a lower low. I'd personally prefer a lower low because I would feel much more comfortable calling bottom if that was the case. Because I do think it'd be accompanied by stimulus. I don't know if you guys have been seeing the moves that we have, or witnessing the moves that we're seeing on something like the Taiwanese dollar right now, TWD. I kind of feel like it's signaling we might get a surprise rate cut this week. I know that's very dubious speculation, but the weakness that we're seeing in the dollar is palpable. I'm going to keep saying that too much weakness in the dollar is not a good thing, and kind of why I think we can get that lower low.
Yeah, probably too much weakness and too much quick of a move. It's something. It's not a good thing. It's something we discussed for rate cuts either. Like you want slow, gradual rate cuts. You do not want Powell to suddenly come in and say, "Hey, we're gonna do 1 BPS rate cut." Like that wouldn't it's the job done, man. Like we are going there anyway. We're gonna do it all at once. Fuck you. That would not be good. Would signify some problems, just like during COVID, what they have done. I think DXY can pause here for a few weeks, but I still do think that it's gonna continue lower though. I do not think we going to get this type of a bounce.
Yeah, I don't either. The dollar has so many headwinds, I think. Ultimately, I will continue to reiterate. I'm like a broken record. I think the risk to the market is USD JPY unwinding in disorderly fashion, and I think we all agree the dollar is coming lower. But I think it's interesting, how we can still have kind of like this two dueling outcomes based on what the dollar is going to do and how quickly it does it. It's kind of irritating, I guess, but no, I mean, we are all expecting the dollar to come lower. We are all expecting that to eventually be a tailwind for risk. It's just a matter of, can they control the sell-off on the dollar? And what was it, like 2 weeks ago when Trump came out and started speaking about, like, I think delaying or like pausing the tariffs on countries like China? It did it with USD JPY at mega demand. Shout out Max or at support. So devs know the importance of that 140 level on USD JPY.
Yeah, if you break that, you start to see leverage really start to unwind. Because as we know, I mean, the carry trade has been the proxy, for a lot of the leverage in the market, right? They use it as essentially like a springboard. And if that springboard breaks, things might start flying. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really, really interesting. And also too, I think Trump came out yesterday or the day before and said that there's no talks with Xi coming up this week. So it's very flippy floppy, so it's hard to get a gauge on when a resolution might come in the pipeline, might come to form a conclusion. It's 1 week we get one set of answers, the next week we get another set of answers. So I think, again, I've been saying is urge some caution in these markets. Pairs like I discussed, that gold oil pair, are not screaming risk on to me. So
there was a big move on oil, wasn't there, at the open?
yes, there was. It actually opened, substantially down on futures yesterday. And I, like I'd said, I discussed it with the Discord this morning, but these are actually great levels because if you remember during Biden's administration, we actually unloaded the strategic reserve, the strategic oil reserve at like $80 something. And from a trade perspective, this would not be a bad level for them to really start filling that thing back up. And I think, that could give maybe some form of bid here, over the next 30 to 45 days. I would be shocked if they don't announce that soon with where oil's trading at.
What is the catalyst for oil to move lower? I don't trade this asset. I'm just curious.
That's literally, Prometheus, my fundamental take on oil, why it's going to go up. And it would make so much sense.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, at some point they're going to do it. And like I said, it would be a great trade. I mean, saying that the United States government made a great trade is crazy, but it would be a good trade at this point, sell it at 85 and buy back at 55, not a bad idea.
You can't say the US government's not watching the charts when, like I said, they're protecting that 140 level on USDJPY. They know.
Yeah, they understand these market dynamics, and they understand the, to an extent, they're not all knowing, as we very well know. Yeah, they're paying attention to some key levels because they understand that if you start to unwind some of this leverage in the markets and things start collapsing faster than they want, it could be a messy situation that they don't probably want to deal with at this time because they're focused elsewhere.
I think we've talked about that concept here before, how, it probably was not planned this way, but I do feel like now it's more or less like a good cop, bad cop, walking or attempting to walk the market down without anything breaking, as we, are kind of facing these liquidity headwinds basically until like June or July. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I do want to highlight, I mean, like the headlines that we're seeing from the Trump administration around things like tariffs, et cetera, they don't really seem to be impacting the market. They haven't really been impacting the market for a few weeks now. But what do we think about FOMC this week, guys? Because I know we kind of briefly covered it earlier on the show. We've been looking at the 10-year. Doesn't exactly look very bullish, really at all. But I mean, people are calling for higher yields throughout this decade. I think it's a very interesting discussion. What's the potential for maybe a surprise rate cut this week? What does that do to something like the dollar, right? Because we have the Taiwanese dollar, and I know it's kind of like a very specific proxy for Asian markets, but I mean, the Taiwanese dollar is putting in a not insignificant move here over the last 2 or 3 sessions.
Let's see the chart.
Louis, can you pull up TWD USD? TWD USD. W. That's not an insignificant move.
Oh, wow. Especially in Forex.
Are we trading the wrong market?
I don't know what it's potentially signaling. I'm sure you could draw a lot of conclusions just based on what your overall bias is on the market. But to me, like the number one crux of it is, okay, the US dollar potentially could be weakening. What did they know? Are we getting a surprise rate cut this week, guys, that would cause the dollar to fall? What do we think about that?
I'm not expecting that, but the market, due to our bonds, the market has repriced the cuts again, that we will get even no cut in June, and I think that's too much as well. I think we will stay on the course, and we will get no cut this time around this week, but we will get the cut in June, which the market's currently not pricing in, but I think it will again.
Should bet on that on Polymarket then.
Yeah.
I
probably
think for
a good
May,
payout.
the odds are for May less than 1% of a 50 plus basis point decrease and a 2% chance of a 25 basis point decrease.
What is your take for a surprise rate cut in on Wednesday?
No bueno.
I just feel like maybe there are a bit of stagflationary data points that have been kind of emerging. Maybe the Fed wants to begin to get a little bit ahead of that. It doesn't really seem likely though, because I mean that hasn't really been their MO, trying to get ahead of data that they don't have their hands on yet. But you know, we have been talking about the 10-year for a while, and how we do think that it is going to fall. I don't know. I guess imagine if they end up hiking rates again, dear God. But no, I just look at the 10-year. I'm not really super bowled up on it necessarily. Like it's shown a lot more resilience around this level than I maybe expected. But you know, maybe we get a rate cut. I don't know. In general, I'm expecting the 10-year to do something probably a bit more volatile here in the near term.
Yeah, I'm still bearish on the yields, but I just think it's going to be gradual, and I also think that gradual is very bullish. I think Powell doesn't have to do a surprise cut. I think all he needs to do is say, we are not cutting today because we don't feel like we need to, but we will cut next time. I think what is not good is if he doesn't cut and then doesn't say that they will cut either next time.
Then you think yields go higher in that case?
No, I'm having a hard time seeing yields go higher regardless, but they just might range for a little longer. We'll see. I think the 2-year yield is really telling the story now.
Yeah, I think you got to be really, really careful when it comes to a surprise rate cut at this point. I've been talking about it in the Discord, but you have a lot of economic data that's been coming in that has been showing that there's deterioration in the economy, specifically in the manufacturing, and jobs are, you know, starting to weaken and really starting to show quite a bit of strain. And because of that, I think if you do get a surprise rate cut tomorrow, the markets likely digest that as they're seeing something that's that they're finding wrong, or not wrong, but bad, and that there might be, you know, some form of worrisome, worrying data point that they're seeing that the market is not. Because I think the market probably digests that as largely bearish if we do get a surprise rate cut. And I think Tommy hit the nail on the head, but their MO has been slow and steady wins the race and sticking to the numbers. And I don't see them straying away from that, right? If as we move forward, though, I do believe what's going to happen is that they are late to the party. And just like what we had with the rate cuts, what happened with the rate cuts, right? When we were at 0%, they said they would hike to like maybe like 150 to 200 basis points. And a good majority of, Silicon Valley Bank, for instance, positioned offsides largely, and they hiked way past what they initially had said. And the velocity of the rate hikes that were coming in towards the tail end started to become larger, and it was much faster. And I think we're going to see something similar to the downside, where they're going to try to really like ease and slow their way into it, you know, and kind of take their time. And eventually, what I believe is going to happen is, you know, because historically, when they cut rates, it is bearish, whether people want to believe it or not, and whether they think that, you know, if they thread the needle, awesome. But you know, the past 10 out of 12 times they've cut rates, it's because, you know, deteriorating economy, we're entering into a bear market, or we see some larger pullback. And because of that, I think the velocity of the rate cuts that are going to come in towards the tail end are going to be much larger than most people expect. And I think it's going to be because that they're late to the party. You know, the whole meme, too late, Jerome Powell, is going to be very real. But that's kind of what I think is going to happen. I think if you get a surprise rate cut tomorrow or on Wednesday, no bueno, and the market's going to digest that as something is wrong, and they're seeing that they need to start fixing stuff rather quickly.
He's going to have to toe a very fine line. Is that tomorrow?
I think
Wednesday?
it's Wednesday. Yeah.
Today is a bank holiday, right? That would explain how low the volume is, I think, across the board. Am I right to say that?
I believe so. I think I saw something.
I'd love to look at some coins today though as well. I know we I think we did a really good job of setting the stage for, you know, kind of the high time frame picture for, God, I don't even want to say macro, because it wasn't even really macro. It was just kind of highlighting, okay, what assets are actually moving the market. But I'd love to kind of, you know, now pivot to some of the assets that could be affected by some of these things later this week, like some risk assets. If you guys have anything in the comments that you'd like us to take a look at, drop those in the comments. But I'm sure we've got some coins to look at, maybe some stocks to look at, Chinese equities potentially. I was looking at those over the weekend once again. I really don't think they look that bad, all things considered. I don't think a lot of these assets look that bad, all things considered. I think it's kind of just a matter of, okay, what ends up transpiring really throughout the rest of the month of May. And then I feel like I've got a pretty good idea of how the rest of the year will go. But every time I say that, market loves to throw a curveball. So do we have any individual names that we're looking at, guys? Anything that really piques our interest right now?
I mean, you got MicroStrategy coming into a big level here. So it makes sense seeing a pullback after a nice rally off the lows. I took a little profit off the table on MicroStrategy Friday, late in the trading session. So, you know, I could picture, you know, maybe some reaccumulation in here. That would make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, big level. I mean, I think above, you know, MicroStrategy getting above $400, you know, gives the green light for another leg, in my opinion. So seeing some pause here, seeing some pullback makes a lot of sense. Maybe we come back, flip this level, something like that. But, you know, entering a new trading range, finding some resistance here, you know, makes a lot of sense, right? Makes a lot of sense. So, you know, I'll be looking for something like this, and then we want to see this level eventually flipped for this. I wouldn't want to see this range revisited either, though. So if you start seeing something like this, you know, I'd be a little more concerned. But anything in here, you know, reaccumulation, consolidation, pause, whatever you want to call it, I think is totally okay. And just gear up for the next leg. So those are levels I'm watching on MicroStrategy, and it's been giving good signal for Bitcoin as well. You know, like from the lows, it's been coming off the lows and leading Bitcoin still, similar to how we saw earlier in the cycle. So I think it's, you know, it's a good ticker to watch, right? To get good signal as far as to what the Bitcoin's going to do.
I think we lost Tommy.
I thought I was rugged.
No, you're good. You're good. I think we lost. I thought Tommy was trying to speak there. It looked like it. Yeah, we lost him. Tommy rugged, classic. Yeah, MicroStrategy looks good here. Yeah, kind of like you marked out there. if we come back down, retest that previous resistance level, hold that as support, and I think you're, primed for the highs, really. Yeah, definitely something like that. Look good. Like you said, it's led the market, or it's led Bitcoin specifically, at least since the pre-inauguration lows. So it's a good chart to definitely pay attention to and see how potentially, alts and BTC is going to behave moving forward. They had that massive announcement, they're doing more buys, and they're adding to their stack and their hodls. So you love to see it. I think too, somebody's asking about Palantir, if we want to pull up that chart. They have earnings. They have earnings today. Yeah, just an absolute monster of a chart. And I mean, this company's already valued at 270 billion, I believe. It's really hard for me to want to bid something that's already has that high of a capitalization. But I mean, it's showing a lot of strength. Whether or not I think it's going to affect the equity markets is probably negligible. If we had Meta, Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon last week, and those are the names that you really want to watch out for, the names that make up the majority of the S&P, right? Because that's going to dictate flows. It's going to dictate rebalancing. It's going to dictate essentially the broader market direction. But yeah, I mean, Palantir, it's a monster chart, really. Do I want to bid it here? No. It's actually one of the charts that I'm kind of eyeing to, if we do start to get into some broader downtrend in equity land, and some materialization, or we start to see the effects of the tariffs materialize. This is actually a chart that I am probably going to look to short, because who knows what they do, right? Who knows?
They rebranded consulting,
dude,
from what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, they do some work with NSA, they do some work with like CIA, FBI. They also have an analytics platform called the Forgery, which is pretty sick. It's all automated analytics for companies. They can use their software to, figure out demographics to sell to and yada yada. But I mean, this is one of those charts that I think is largely retail hype driven, and I just don't see from a business model sustainability standpoint how you really see something like this, be valued at much greater than what it's already being valued at. Yeah.
What's its market cap right now for me?
270 bill.
Holy shit, man, that's wild.
Yeah, dude. And I think if you looked into it, they had like their net profits were like 20 million last quarter. Not even that. Like, I mean, how do you justify valuing a company like that? I mean, to me, that's just, it's worse than Tesla was when Tesla was back last cycle for Tesla. It's worse than that. It's crazy. So
you think this is a trap here?
I think this is largely retail, hype driven. I genuinely think so. I just don't see, like I said, from a valuation standpoint, how you can justify valuing the company at the valuation it's currently at. It reminds me a lot of Quantum right now. Like, Quantum is literally vaporware. It reminds me of a few other names, but yeah. Ooh, we lost Tommy again.
Yeah, this is a pretty crazy chart. I mean, I feel like this is either just a big like double top trap here, or this is a chart that's going to enter into a massive parabola here.
Yeah, and that's
like
the thing.
First blow off.
Yeah, you don't want to get in front of it until you get confirmation that it is the blow off. So you just kind of like let it play out, and once it starts to show signs of weakness, and if we get a pullback in broader equity land, I think that's when you hammer. But I wouldn't step in front of the train right now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Prometheus, what do you think of the app? About the stock AppLovin app?
AppLovin, I looked at it the other day. Actually, I
The
believe
ticker?
it's some APP. I believe it is a marketing. They're like marketing consulting focused.
Holy
And
moly, that chart.
It looks
yeah,
like the same thing.
yeah, it looks way worse though, in my opinion. Like you can't. Yeah, I mean, I think we're like structurally, we backfilled the majority of that liquidity on that huge gap up on earnings, but yeah, I mean, this is one of those companies. It's a consulting company, I believe. I think they're more marketing focused, and they help companies market their products and get them out there. But if you really think about it, the market and the economy is slowing down, which, like I've said, there's signs that, and there's data points that are showing that. What is the first thing to go that companies cut? It is the marketing teams and is the consultants, and it is like that is the first thing to go. Like my old job, right? I was talking to one of my old buddies, and he literally said like half of the marketing department got slaughtered. Just like get them out. And stocks like this are not stocks that I want to own if we're in an environment like that.
What about the environment that we do not go to the recession and we actually experience a boom?
If we experience a boom, then I mean, I don't know a whole lot about this stock in particular, but I think stocks that'll do very, very, very well are going to be like Robinhood, Coinbase, entering into a strong bull market, and a roaring economy. Stocks like that are direct benefactors of retail having excess liquidity, excess cash, entering into these, opening up brokerage accounts, going on there bidding, buying 0DT options. Those are the names that you're likely going to want to bid, right?
What that chart reminds me of, Prometheus?
What?
Does anybody have any guesses? That middle finger candle. If we can consolidate,
that has to be something terribly bearish.
No, it's actually kind of bullish. Solana. Solana, May 2021.
Interesting.
Oh man, we need an older chart.
That's right here. Not this one?
No.
Oh.
It's like down there to the left. It's like the first leg on that.
Just out of scope. It feels so similar though.
Oh yeah. If we can come down and like base out. I mean, interestingly enough, a chart looks like that right now is Binance, where it's just like looks like a dying bouncing ball.
True.
But it's just holding support.
So
maybe you're telling me that there is a chance.
There is a chance.
Damn, I think 10x off that move too.
Dude, I remember looking at Solana at $2 on Coinbase app back in the day and being like, I should maybe bid this.
Well, I remember debating with myself internally about what I wanted to bid next. I can't even remember what I was debating between, but I remember seeing Sol at probably like $4 or $5 and not pulling the trigger on it because, there's a reason these things are undervalued and then shoot up 100x. It's because the market hasn't caught on that they're going to be pumped yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to flip this level.
That first Solana markup happened right when I was getting into crypto, like right at that point in time.
I missed Solana twice. What are you gonna do?
I got into the markets. ETH was at 400, and right before I was playing was it Synthetics, and
Oh man.
yeah, caught that. That was nice. That was like towards the beginning of my time.
You know that Synthetics has like a perps platform now, and the stable coin they use to collateralize it has depegged and still has not been repegged.
Oh no. That's never good.
It's like USDX or something like that. I don't know. It's been like 10% off peg for a whole month though.
Dude, love and win. That's right. Bring 2020 back. Bring 2020 back. Throw shit at a wall and it sticks.
There's a Caspa update today, supposedly, or something.
Was there?
I don't know. Everyone was talking about it in the comments.
Let me see.
What's the chart look like?
Looks like it's going to reject.
This thing is fried.
I mean,
They
honestly,
solved the trilemma.
you could get this. I mean, I think this would be for buying, you know. Like today's the sell the news event, right? You got their new upgrade, whatever, into resistance. Boom, pull back, coming to here. If you could flip this higher low, start working on like a serious work on this level. You know, I might consider buying some if you get a pull back into here.
I guess they just upped their network from 1 block per second to 10, figured out the trilemma. I don't know what all that jargon means, but yeah, they just got to bring people back. I mean, the wave that we saw back at the beginning of the cycle for Caspa was huge. You know, I know they tried to implement shitcoining on it, but it never really took off. So, you know, the whole fundamental thing, the whole fundamental narrative, it's just going to take a little bit more time to really play out. Like, could Caspa be, you know, one of the most vital blockchains for, you know, the crypto sector and in the broader financial institutional environment? Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you got to realize that that's going to be, you know, take 5 to 10 years before we see any real world, you know, implementation and integration. So
It's difficult for me to want to click to invest when it's still 2.5 billion market cap.
Yeah, and with all this supply above, I mean, I'm sure it's going to do well if we get a good, you know, market rally. This is just can't be ignored here. All the buyers that are stuck up here that are going to be looking to get out if you get a move up into here, you know.
distribution within distribution within distribution.
That's that trap in late July was absolutely savage, man. Looking at that chart.
3 drive, man. I remember Max like calling the top on this. He got out like up in here. I was like, damn.
3 drive and a 3 drive.
There was a 5th drive, not even 3 drive, basically.
There was 10 drives.
The fact that just like 2 or 3 days later, you went from thinking you were about to see aggressive price discovery to being down like 40%.
Oh man,
Literally, this was a
ridiculous,
massive drop.
And if you look back to the left, Louis, when it was at like 5 cents, a lot of people, where you had that wedge, that ascending wedge, a lot of people were eyeing that kind of fractal and got completely trapped. Yeah, and there was, I mean, I think that
like up here. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah, they were looking at that and they were expecting, you know, kind of that ascending wedge pattern to play out again. And
I mean, I was bullish up here too, you know, but then once we got that, I was like, fuck, okay. And then once we got this bounce up into here, I was like, okay, I'm out. So I still got to sell pretty high on this massive bounce, you know. That was good, but yeah, it was
Caspa's clean. It's a clean chart. Like it plays, the levels play really well on this chart. A big issue too that it had was they switched to ASIC mining too quick, and you just had a ton of, you know, massive miners like Mara, you know, just hoard the hash rate and just constantly dump on the market. And that, in my opinion, was the largest downfall that Caspa, the big issue they had this cycle was switching to ASICs too soon. Because if we remember Dash in 2017 or 18,
I do.
yeah, very similar. They had a huge rip up, and when they launched the ASIC miners for Dash, it marked the top as well. It's very similar to Caspa.
Hype's an interesting chart.
It's the strongest chart in the market, dude. It's pairs, everything paired, all of its pairs, like it's outperforming everything.
Yeah,
If you get this,
I think you want to see this probably gap up soon, or else
yeah, you're gonna get this.
maybe you're gonna get a super big double bottom form on it.
Oh, like $10 double bottom?
I don't know. It's gonna be stronger than every other altcoin probably, but it will depend on what Bitcoin wants to do, right? And if Bitcoin's gonna go back at some point in May and form a higher low, then Hyperliquid will probably double bottom. But at the same time, if Bitcoin's about to like gap up to the highs, then this is just painting that slow grind through supply that eventually just rips face higher. I wouldn't take a position on Hyperliquid at this price personally.
Yeah, I wanted here. I thought we were gonna get this here, and I got a little too greedy with my entry, which I never do. The one time I was like, okay, give me this pullback, I'll buy it. Didn't happen.
I think we're still gonna get it, Louis.
Yeah, it look. This is kind of like it's either gonna do like breakaway or we're gonna get this and then this. I feel like.
Yeah.
So, I feel like a lot of it's kind of like Bitcoin and what ETH are doing right now. Just slow grind bull chop, and they break either up or they break down, and there's no real statistical advantage to like these rising channels. It's like it's like a 50-50 shot, so it's kind of like I'm trying to tell the Discord that like with like Bitcoin too, it's just like we're just slow grinding bull chop right now. Like there's not much you can do in these environments other than just kind of wait and see what happens if you weren't positioned from the lows already, like just doing this. Like, can you imagine just more of this?
A megaphone pattern?
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind, but lots of people would grow very nervous, both bears and sideline people.
Well, ETH flipping green on the day. Look at that.
But I feel that even lots of bulls are sort of like this market is pretty much kind of lethargic. Like price moved up from the lows, but people are not excited.
Yeah.
Looks like we're getting rated. Tommy, you got moderation privilege?
Let's go. I'm good.
No.
I'm doing it too. I'm helping.
Get him, boys. Get him.
Get him. Get out of here.
No chance.
These mother effers, man.
Get them out.
My only question is like, how are there so many bot accounts that like, how can you enlist so many bot accounts to raid?
What are you talking about?
Oh, we're nuking them actively.
Yep, they're getting out.
It's just so many, man. It's like a zombie apocalypse in here when that happens. Real. Crime was enlisted to raid our streams.
Does anyone know how it is, for example, on platforms like Instagram or TikTok? Because I feel like the bot issue is getting out of hand everywhere.
I don't really know about Instagram. Instagram and like Facebook are the same. Like you don't get crypto stuff on there really much. So
yeah.
God, the market commentary that comes up on my Instagram feed, man, makes me feel very lucky to to work for BB. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
Speaking of the SPOOs, you just had up the SPX. I am seeing a ton of options volume come in at the 6,000 strike. And I think that would catch a lot of people off guard if we got a move like that.
Would definitely surprise me.
Yeah.
Woo.
I think you hit 500 on Qs and then probably start to pull back finally.
Jeez, they're still there.
Whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
Comments probably don't even know what we're talking about, though, because we're nuking them so fast you can barely even see their comments.
Yeah.
Just don't say the dirty word, the ticker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to make me actually look it up on Deck Screener. They won.
It's not even a thing.
I
I've
don't
looked
even
it
think it's
up.
a thing.
I've literally looked it up. It's not even real.
What?
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a XRP shitcoin or something.
Hmm.
Oh my God. Leave us alone. I feel like we're going to see some early week upside because, I mean, when we have a gap down, I feel like the last handful of weeks when we've gapped down on a Monday, you see it retraced, or on a Sunday rather, you see it retraced on Monday or Tuesday. I kind of feel like that's what's going to happen. And then Jerome and FOMC will probably give us a better gauge for what to expect this week.
I think so as well.
But I'd like to see the Qs hit 500. It's a nice round number resistance.
Yeah, hit those round numbers. I know, like, yeah, because that would be kind of in confluence, with about 5,800 on the SPX, 5,700. So move up into there. I think you really see the initial trend that we had from the highs down on the SPX, something like that to probably continue. I think it was, we kind of had a little bit of an interruption in regards to the whole, tariff news, and you start to see, some real impact happen due to the announcements that I don't think the market is really pricing in at all, and a real slowdown of growth. And actually, this previous weekend, I talked with a buddy who owns his own company, and he had mentioned that how expensive material costs are. And they, the bids that they gave out, a month, 2 months ago, they have to now go back to their clients and essentially say, hey, we can't do these jobs anymore because of material costs. And I think you're going to see that largely start to materialize in the economy and the broader market.
Jeez, man. I can't get rid of these damn things.
It's crazy.
Oh. So many. But no, I am curious to see what Powell does this week. Not because I was like super intrigued to know if he would cut rates or not like a week or two ago, but just like given some of the volatility we're seeing on some of these pairs on the peripheries, right? Like the Taiwanese dollar. I wonder if that is hinting at some sort of news this week related to rate cuts and weakening the US dollar. But that's just, I think, more my personal curiosity than anything.
Jack, guess I'm
nuke like a long-term supporter of the show.
This is my take on these bots, man.
It's ridiculous. I'm gonna have a conversation with the dev because you can mute. I mean, if it was like X, we could just mute the ticker. We'd never have to see it ever again.
Right.
Yeah.
Jackus, I'm curious, are you guys in Europe, in Europa, starting to see like a material change in prices and costs for your goods?
Well, we've been seeing that since COVID. Not gonna lie, but lately it's getting slightly better. But yeah, the standard of living basically went down, but obviously each country is slightly different too. So yeah, I would say the biggest issue is really the cost of living, which is insane. Like you guys are having headaches over, 7 to 8 yearly incomes in lots of Europe major cities. It's like 15 to 20 to 25 or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's outrageous. It's crazy.
Yeah. Like I mean, to a certain degree, it's a good place to live, truly. Like Europe is, culturally and all of that. It's one of the best places to live on its own. It's just hard to live. So if you have money, it's a good place to be. But if you don't, then it's really hard for common folk because you're not earning much compared to how much everything costs. Plus, and again, it depends country to country. It's really not like in the US. Each country is sort of on its own. I would say, like you guys see us more as like one place, one nation, but it's really not like that. Although some people are trying to do that.
Yeah, and with that, I think too, somebody in the comments just mentioned Buffett. You talked about,
I can't believe we didn't talk about Warren Buffett retiring today, man.
Did he retire?
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The GOAT.
I know. Now he's gonna die. I'm
Wow.
sorry.
Wow, man.
I mean, he's like 95, dude.
He's still really sharp for a 95-year-old, man. I was listening to some of that program earlier, this or last week rather, and you can hear the age in his voice, but the mind is still very sharp.
Yeah, it's really rather impressive. I think that's a big thing too, continuing to work, continuing to exercise your mind and is very, very important, but I won't get on that whole soapbox.
I think that's probably a good spot to be wrapping up the stream, guys. We hope that you enjoyed today's iteration of Market Check. I'm certain that this week we'll have no shortage of volatility and things for us to discuss. But yeah, that concludes today's stream. We'll be back as always, guys. You should know the schedule by now, most of you at least. If you're new though, if this was your first time watching Market Check, we are live Monday through Friday whenever the New York Stock Exchange is open. We typically go live around 11:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But also make sure to finish up your day with Market Talk and King Wabi. That's hosted through our Because Bitcoin X account. And yeah, like I said, that occurs in the afternoon. Make sure to stay following and subscribe to that account so you can be notified not just when we schedule those spaces, but also when we go live. Before we depart, though, just want to run by you guys real quickly your go-to tool for this cycle, whether or not you are an active trader, long-term investor, or on-chain degen, you will find huge utility with the BB terminal. So before we officially bid you adieu, I think I said that correctly, right? I'm sure some French speaking maxi will will criticize the way I just said that. But y'all have a great rest of your day, of course, as always, and stay safe.
Tired of outdated trading tools, confused charts, dozens of tabs, endless stress? You're not alone. Introducing BB Terminal, your all-in-one command center for crypto trading. Track your portfolio, monitor the markets, stay ahead, all in one place. From chaos to clarity, from struggle to success. BB Terminal.